Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Diana Dinky Smith. Diana is an author, blogger, storyteller, and mental health advocate whose work is dedicated to helping people navigate grief, personal growth, and life's unexpected challenges with honesty, compassion, and hope. After spending more than 22 years as a successful realtor in Colorado, Diana's life changed forever following the tragic loss of her daughter, Lily. The years that followed led her through a profound journey of grief, depression, healing, and self-discovery. Rather than allowing that experience to define her, she chose to transform it into a mission to help others feel less alone in their own struggles. Drawn from lived experience, extensive personal study, and a deep passion for understanding the human condition, Diana writes about resilience, emotional wellness, grief, purpose, and self-mastery. She's the author of multiple books, including works focused on personal transformation and healing, as well as Veridien, an epic fantasy series that explores themes of courage, sacrifice, redemption, and hope through a richly imagined world. Known simply as Dinky to friends, readers, and listeners, Diana brings authenticity, warmth, humor, and hard-earned wisdom to every conversation. She believes healing is not about getting over life's losses, but learning how to carry them while continuing to grow, love, and move forward. Diana lives in Colorado with her husband, Rick, and continues to write, create, and advocate for stronger emotional health through storytelling, education, and honest dialogue. Her message is simple. No matter what you've been through, your story is not over, and there is purpose to be found in the chapters ahead. Diana, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It's a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thanks, Dave. How you doing?
I am doing well. We have a good stretch of warm weather in upstate New York, which where I am, that can be rare for this time of year and any time of year because we are known for the change of seasons. And where I live in an area where you can turn the heat around in the morning and the air conditioner on in the afternoon. That's how variable the weather patterns can get,
Yep.
but particularly during the spring and summer months.
Right.
But yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've been really busy writing, and that's a passion I never thought I would ever get to utilize. It was kind of in me because I used to play with words, and English was my favorite subject in school, but I never got to use any of it per se. But I have been able to really find my strength in writing, and I've, you know, done very well. I had one proofreader tell me that I was the best author he had worked with in a very long time. So that made me feel very good, and that's with Veridien.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about your latest project. But in the meantime, I have some other questions for you. So whenever you're ready, we'll get going.
Let's go.
All right. First of all, tell our listeners about the events of May 14th, 2011.
I heard a knock at the door, and I went and opened the door, and there was my youngest daughter, my youngest natural daughter, with her child. And I let them in, and the party began because it was my birthday. And I had a lot of fun with everybody. We had food, movies, games, just a little bit of everything that you can imagine. And everybody decided about 9 o'clock or something like that it was time to let everybody, you know, go to bed, do their thing or whatever. And in doing that, Lily was kind of always the last to leave because she really didn't want to leave, but she lived up in Denver, and I lived in the Springs. So she had about an hour to her home. But as she was leaving, I said to her, can your daughter stay with me for the rest of my birthday weekend and I'll bring her home to you on Monday in time for you to go to work? And she said, okay. So then her daughter and her did the I love you, mommy, I love you, daughter, kind of thing. And then I sang You Are My Sunshine as I held her really close. And she said, Mom, you're singing in my ear. I said, I know. I want you to remember the words. And she said, You've been singing this to me since I was a baby. I should know all the words by now. And I said, Oh, that's good enough. But you are still my sunshine. She headed up to Denver, and there is a really long on ramp that she had to take. And just as she was getting to it, there was a drunk driver that actually was coming down the road, but nobody knew the driver was drunk. They just knew the car was going the wrong way. And there was a big truck right in front of my daughter. And that truck moved over. And before he actually made his transition, he could see the car coming and he called the cops and he said, while he was on the phone, he said, somebody needs to get here as quick as possible because there is a car coming down the on-ramp the wrong way. And he said, I think it's too late. Because then he had shifted over. And when you have a big vehicle in front of you, you don't know what somebody's, changing lanes for or whatever. And it ended up that the driver hit Lily's car, driver headlight to driver headlight. And that impact caused them to spin. And then another vehicle went through that. And the cops went up to the girl in the SUV and said, Are you all right? And she said, Yeah, we're okay. But she was the only one in the vehicle. And they went and checked on my daughter and she had passed away. So, I got a call, and this was like an hour or so before my birthday was over. And the hard thing for me was that she had a child and she was killed on my birthday. Those two things right there, they've stuck with me for the longest time. And we had to tell Dyra, or my granddaughter, what had happened to her mom. And she was just a shattered young person. She was only 12. But the irony for her is she had already lost her dad when she was 8. And she became an official orphan on my birthday. And the other ironic part of this is Dyra was born weighing a pound 13 and a half ounces. And she had to fight for her life. She had to fight to breathe because she had underdeveloped lungs. And she had spent a great deal of time in the hospital, either in a medically induced coma or just being intubated, and just went through so much. But now she is a mom with 3 babies. She has 2 boys aged 5 and 3. And then she has a little girl that looks just like her grandma that passed away, with reddish blonde hair and blue eyes, which is kind of funny because my granddaughter and her husband both have dark hair and dark eyes. And their 2 little boys have dark hair and dark eyes because they are Hispanic and Filipino. And out comes this little baby that does not look like she belonged to that family. But you can tell just by looking at her that she takes after her grandma.
Well, first of all, my condolences for your loss.
Thank
Um, as you know, during our pre-chat, I think we both have shared that journey that no parent ever wants to go on. And, with the death of my daughter over 23 years ago, different circumstances, but the pain of dealing with the death of a child is just so universal. Because as parents, we're not expected to come into this world carrying the legacy of our children. It should be the other way around. We don't come into this world thinking that we're going to bury one of our children. That never even occurred to me. And once it did, my whole world was turned upside down. You raised Lily's daughter
Right.
for after she died. What were the challenges that you experienced, if any, raising her daughter?
She had been born premature, and that has caused her to have a delayed learning disability. Now, it's not that she is not educated, it's just that she doesn't catch on as quick as other kids did back then, especially. And she was in a great deal of shock. And for the following probably 36 months, we had to deal with her constant crying, mourning, weeping, grieving. And in addition to that, she took a few risks as a 12-year-old, and we had to help her understand that that was not a good choice.
Yeah.
She wanted to go to heaven to be with her mom. And you have to make some decisions when it comes to that kind of, processing. And she started cutting, which was very, very difficult because she was cutting on the inside of her legs. And that was like, oh my God. So we had to keep an eye on her for a long time. And as she got a little bit older, closer to the end of that 36-month time frame, she started hanging out with some people that weren't really so great. And we had to really put a kibosh on that. But she really straightened out and pulled her, thoughts and actions together to do better.
When my daughter Janine died, she died 10 months after giving birth to her only daughter. We didn't totally raise her, but her significant other stayed with us, me and my wife Sherry, for 4 years after Janine died. And that was due to a promise that he made to Janine that he would not uproot Brianna, their daughter, until she was ready to go to kindergarten. And then he could go back to his hometown and do whatever he needed to do. But for me, it was kind of like a double-edged sword because I was grieving for the loss of my daughter, and I was also grieving for my granddaughter who would never get to know her mom. And I don't know if that was the same experience for you, but I felt like I was doing double duty with grief, and it was
Right.
Extremely draining for me, just
Right.
grieving for both individuals until my granddaughter was able to grow up enough and understand the significance of the loss herself. And in the meantime, I was grieving for both of us.
Right. I went through the same thing because it's like, how do you actually handle, trying to figure out how to process everything in your own head? And you have a little one that requires the same thing.
Yep.
And neither one of you are hitting 100 or even 75 as far as performance goes. And for me and her, I think we were both well below 50, but we could take care of ourselves and eat and maybe have a conversation with somebody. But for the most part, just trying to figure out what to say and how to say it. We both started counseling and it did not fit either one of us. So we did not stick with that.
Counseling isn't for everybody.
No.
But the fact of the matter is that you and Rick gave her your love, you gave her guidance, you were consistent figures in her life, and eventually she figured it out.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like she's got a beautiful family.
Yeah.
She's really blossomed as a young woman. So you and Rick, considering the hand of cards you were dealt, did an outstanding job.
Right. Thank you. So we had a good support system, mostly for Dyra, because I became agitated and very unfriendly to be around because I became mad at God.
Oh,
I became mad at the world. I became mad at myself because I said to myself, what if I made her spend the night?
Mhm.
What if I had, held her just a little bit longer? What if, what if, what
Mm.
if? And those what ifs can really bring on guilt in your heart and your head for the longest time. And it's like, how do you process that? So I've learned how to do a lot of things in a beneficial way for myself.
And the what ifs, they're part of every loss I think we experience,
Oh,
particularly when it's a child loss. I mean, for my daughter, she died as a result of cancer, and I did the what ifs, but for different reasons. What if I had seen the signs of her cancer sooner? What if I had convinced her to do another clinical trial? What if this? What if that? I mean, and finally, I just stopped asking questions because I wasn't going to get an answer that satisfied me.
right.
And the only answer that would have satisfied me would have been God or one of his representatives to come down and say, look, we made a mistake. We're going to give you your life back. And I knew the first year and one day into my grief that wasn't going to happen. That
Right.
once I hit that second year, I realized that this is my life moving forward. And I had some decisions to make in terms of how I was going to live the remainder of my life.
And Dave, that can be really challenging because when you lose a child, we see the thing about having a child is we become emotionally attached
Yep.
to that person. And it's not like your neighbor. You may have an attachment, good or bad. It's still an attachment. But the attachment for a child is very different because we become protective.
Yep.
And that adds on to the list of reasons why we want to continue being a parent.
Mhm.
And when you lose a child, that part of you for that person gets ripped out. Because it's no longer there for you to, continue doing that.
Yep.
And um, it's like, what could I do all this for? Why why did this happen to me?
Mhm.
Why do I have to keep going as half a mom?
Mhm.
Why do I have to endure this kind of pain?
Yep.
And I had the reason.
Yeah. And the why questions are just as bigger part of the journey that we go through in getting to the other side as the what if questions. And those questions have to be asked. It's part of the process with every loss. We go there because we're trying to make sense out of everything.
And loss of a child is not the only type of grief people go through.
No.
And death of a child is not the only form of loss we go through.
Yep.
Somewhere along the line, I came up with this concept on loss and grief and life itself. When we're little, Dave, we we have to learn how to be um strong
Mm-hmm.
because as human beings, we're not just supposed to sit here and absorb all the sunshine because we got to have a few shadows to go along with it. I got to tell you, I call it scratches to scars. And what that's really about is like when I was a baby, my my stepdad married my mom and moved us to North Carolina. Well, I was not his child. My dad's name was Alfred. And his five sisters called him Al. And they always called me Al's stepdaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was an infant from like 7 months. I was Al's stepdaughter
Yeah.
all through my life. And see, one thing that I didn't realize until I was older is that was a pretty deep scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister got burned when she was 6, and people started calling her names, calling me names, and those were more scratches.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after a while, the scratches that we develop through childhood, they stay with us for a very long time because they actually define the kind of strength we have.
Yep.
And when we do not know how to tell somebody to get off my ass, we end up just kind of burying those scratches.
Mm-hmm.
And And in reality, there are wounds that become bigger and deeper over time. Sometimes they get infected. Sometimes they might heal over a little bit. But the hard thing is for a person that's really been through a lot of scratches, when it comes to self-esteem, they don't really understand that that is not necessarily their fault. They may fall victim to it, but it doesn't mean they have to wear that for all their lives. And when it comes to picking friends, do I pick a friend that might pick on me? Do I find a partner that is stronger than me that turns out to be narcissistic? People that have low self-esteem, they do not know how to function that well in life. And when there is a tragedy of any kind, that can throw them for a loop that they do not know how to understand.
Yeah.
And it takes a very long time for that person that's got those deep scratches and wounds to want to live forward. And that's what happens with a lot of our young people today. They have been without the love, support, food, safety, kindness, all of that. And they don't feel like they're really worth having around.
Mm.
So it's easier to shoot up on drugs or drink or, have paid sex, whatever you want to call it. Because when you're out there on the street, what you have to figure out what your options are. Number one, you're not safe. Number two, you don't really have good food. Who's your support system? So I had to learn how to make it cope from scratches to scars.
Yeah.
And I have learned the process in doing that.
Yeah, and it is a process. And, what happens to us in childhood dictates what's going to happen to us later on. If we live in a home environment that's unhealthy, that doesn't promote safety, that doesn't promote compassion or understanding or two-way communication, and if that narrative isn't interrupted, that child's going to go out of the home carrying those wounds, and
Right,
they're going to, because of the trauma, they're going to recreate situations where that trauma is going to play out again.
right,
And it leads to problems with intimacy, emotional regulation, you name it. And it just leads to a general overall challenge for them to function effectively as adults.
right,
And also, we can't forget the impact of social media as well, too. I mean, a lot of our young adults have a lot of mental health issues that are related to a lot of time that they spend comparing each other on social media. But certainly young adults are dealing with a lot more information overload than I ever had to deal with when I was their age.
right.
Um,
Absolutely.
and there are more challenges and that we need to help them navigate, and we need to help them turn the scratches that they inevitably are going to get into scars that are going to be scars of resilience.
And Dave, I really believe everybody has the opportunity to have a stronger self-esteem, self-worth,
Mm.
and to be enough. But how do you teach them to understand that they are the backbone to their own life?
Mm.
They are the one that person is the one, male or female, that has to stand up for themselves. And some people are born with a very gentle heart, and it's going to be hard for them to stand up. But for the kid that really has a strong constitution, they're going to beat the daylights out of whoever is beating them up because they finally get that backbone. And
Mhm.
see, the backbone, it's like a ladder. And you start at the tailbone and then you eventually grow up and you hit the back of the brain, the stem.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's where hopefully every person is able to have the wisdom
Yeah.
and the fortitude to say, stop. I'm not
Yeah.
taking this crap anymore. And they have to learn how to understand it. so
Yeah.
they can get a decent job, a decent education, a good partner, learn how to manage money, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are slightly out of alignment with yourself, it's hard to find how to step up on that,
Mm-hmm.
build that back.
And I think, one of the things I do as a adjunct professor at Utica University, I always tell my students that you're capable of achieving great things. I don't care what you've heard in the past. I don't care what, what other academics have told you. I don't care what grades you got in your previous courses. I want to treat you as if you're capable of doing great things. First
Right.
thing is there needs to be a message of empowerment. They need to know that we have the confidence in them that they can transcend any challenges, also knowing that they have our support to do that. So,
Personal growth is something that when I was a kid, it wasn't called personal growth. It was like suck it up, buttercup, bootstraps, all that kind of crap. And I didn't always believe that I was capable of doing a lot of things
mhm.
because I was Al's stepdaughter. And I saw a lot of favoritism with my younger four siblings where I was left out. And I saw them benefit from things from the family.
Mhm.
And, I had to think in my head, why am I not getting the same kind of stuff?
Mhm.
And, that was a deep wound. That was a
Mhm.
deep scratch that got infected. But we're really, as human beings, we have to build that fortitude, that strong backbone, and let it help us stand up to be able to fight the battles that happen on a regular basis, and who knows
Mhm.
what regular really means? Because
Yep.
when it comes right to the point, you never know what's around the corner.
Yep. You don't.
And I love that part about being a human because if we had life just laid out for us so beautifully, we would not know how to face a challenge.
Yep.
And it is so important to learn how to do that and to do it the way that fits you instead of some prescribed or clinical type of approach for improving your mental health.
And as long as it helps us get through the other side of any challenge, it's all good. So,
Right.
want to shift gears for a second. And I always like to ask a question of my guests who have lost somebody very dear to their heart. So, what I'd like you to do is tell our audience about your daughter, Lily, and what you remember most about her.
Lily was about 5'4", and she was a little plump on the bottom, and she could joke about that. She said, I've got more cushion than a lot of you other skinny people, and I can probably be more fair weather than you because I've got this extra energy here. But Lily had the most beautiful blue eyes, and she had a way of when she got photographed that her pictures just turned out so precious. She never held back from any of that. And she loved to sing. You know the song Black Velvet? She had that deep, raspy voice, and she could deliver that so well. And before she passed away for one of my birthdays, she gave me two songs, Wind Beneath My Wings and The Power of Love or something like that. But I was able to play those at her memorial. And Lily was into photography. And because Dyra was born so early, she had to learn how to homeschool her child because Dyra had a little bit of she was a little antsy. So it was hard for the teacher to keep her in place and, still teach all the other kids. By the age of 12, Dyra had actually calmed down quite a bit, but now she is homeschooling her own three children. And Lily was just loving and understanding and patient and always logical. And there were so many people that consider Lily to be their best friend because of how she would take the time to help them get through something. And not everybody wants to take that time to help another person, but Lily did. She was always like that.
Yeah, it just sounds like she's a very just terrific young lady, and somebody who was willing to sit down with you even during your worst trauma, your worst tragedy, your worst day of your life. And it's rare that people, especially at that young age, want to do that. They
Yeah.
want to sit with somebody else's pain, particularly in a death avoidance society that we have. There's not everybody wants to do that. Let's put it that way.
Right. Absolutely.
So, what is your grief like today, as
Um,
compared to what it was the first year after Lily's passing?
Extremely managed. I I don't cry all the time because for the first 7 years after Lily passed, I was very angry. I was a monster. I'll call myself that because that's in my opinion, that's what I was. I was not kind. And then my oldest daughter, because I only had two girls, and my youngest one passed away, so that left my oldest daughter. And she said to me, "Mom, don't you see me anymore?" And I didn't. I couldn't see past my own grief. I could not manage any way, shape, or form to be able to find the way to be a, a better person.
You talked about the anger, despair. I went through all of that in the early phase of grief. And again, now my grief has become, I would say, more manageable, like yours. 23 years later, it's become more integrated. My daughter is very much a part of me. The best parts of her are the best parts of me. And I've literally moved forward with her, integrating her essence into mine. And I just move forward in my grief. And I tell my students and anybody I do bereavement support for that my daughter and I are a package deal. As it turns out, my
Good
other
for
aunt, yeah, yeah, we're a package deal. So if you get me, you get her. And if you see a lot of young energy come out, that's probably her influence. But one of the things, I know you know this, is that society has had this, many in society have had this time limited perspective about grief that after 6 months to a year, you should be over. You don't get over 18 years of a relationship in 1 year.
No,
Um, how old was Lily? I think she's 30,
31. She
31.
was
So you don't get over 31 years of a relationship in a year. You don't just
no,
bury that.
no,
Um, as Maury Schwartz, the subject of Mitch Albom's book Tuesdays with Maury, said, death ends a life, not a relationship.
right.
And it's what we grieve, the loss of those relationships. And we grieve the loss of their physical presence. We grieve the loss of all that we could have had moving forward with them.
Right.
And that's why grief, and for any loss, is a very complex process. It isn't linear. It's very, very much circular.
One thing about life is it's about learning lessons, and it's about learning how to either absorb or, avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you and I, we have been given new opportunities to share with the world. And it's just like with AI, it's like with neuroscience, and it's just like with the transition of, not always having a gas or fossil fueled car. Now we have electric cars and things evolve. But I can tell you 30 years ago, Dave, I could not type at all. I could not type. I even broke a brother word processor. And that's hard to do. But
Absolutely.
but I managed to do it. And now I have I have four computers. I have double monitors. I just got, oh my God, I'm so excited. I just got, it's called a triple thread or something like that. For my laptop, I now have an extended 3 monitors where I can work and not have to be stuck in this chair because I can move them around. But I love computers. I can tear them apart, put them back together. But sometimes, and I had to learn this. I wasn't college educated, but I did get a certificate of completion accounting and data processing. So I was very good with numbers, and English was my favorite subject, which I never got to use. But I did, as a skill, develop the accounting processing to be able to make some money that way. And I did all right with that. I had to learn how to 10 key, but I still didn't know how to type. But those things, the those things are called evolution, personal evolution.
Yep.
Because I grew up on a farm. I grew up with cows, pigs, chickens, snakes, porcupines, all of that. But we have to learn how to evolve in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do not learn how to understand our emotional regulation, it's going to be difficult to evolve more smoothly.
Yep, absolutely.
So if we can recognize what's going on inside of us, we can do that mental shift ourselves and find a way to have a better life, better relationships, better money, a better job, better everything.
And Diana, sometimes I think the best resource we have is ourselves. Sometimes we don't realize that. But if we take the time, sit in the quiet, go within, the answers will usually come to us. And it may not be the answers that we're seeking, but it's the answers that we need. And it's the
Right,
answers that we need to move us forward. But
right.
we have to quiet the chatter in our head and just go within and realize that everything we need is inside of us.
And sometimes when we're hurting so bad, when we are hurting so bad on the inside, we can't see past the pain.
No.
We can't see a better tomorrow. All we can feel is the definition of the pain that something has caused us that keeps us from moving forward. And like I did in a podcast, I said, who wants to hang around with somebody that looks like this? So if you, I mean, really, if you go to work and you have a grumpy person that looks like that, you're going to walk on the other side of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that person may need somebody's gentle touch.
Yep.
Somebody to say, hey, you want to come have coffee with me? I don't drink coffee. You want to have lunch with me? I don't know where to go. I don't have any money. People are going to be that way because they hurt.
Yeah.
And when we can learn how to, like when you have dry hands, you're going to put lotion on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to learn how to smooth that out a little bit, but it has to take time, and you have to understand it's needed. And a lot of times we just kind of throw that away and we don't pay attention and we just get used to the pain. And that's a hard way to live.
A lot of times people who are angry on the outside are sad or hurting on the inside.
Absolutely.
And if we realize it's sometimes what we see on the surface is just an illusion, we can look beyond that and just start up a conversation. Just ask the person questions about their lives. What do they like to do? Because, maybe somebody has not taken the time to get past their grumpiness, to get past their standoffishness, to try to take a look at the person, the real person. And
Right.
I think eventually when you do that and you communicate and plant that seed that I'm interested in you as a person, I'm interested in your life, eventually they soften up and eventually there's a connection. But you're right, it takes time.
Right.
It takes time. And when you've been hurt, regardless of whether it's through grief, regardless of whether it's been through abandonment, regardless of whether it's been through a divorce, you tend to put the guard up because you don't want to get hurt again.
Absolutely.
So
I oftentimes, as human beings, we don't look at ourselves and go, oh, well, I really made an impact on that person's life. But I've had several people in the last few months tell me that I made a difference for them. And, one is an artist that she kind of put the art on the back shelf. I mean, she almost buried it. And she said to me, I was afraid to do this. I thought I was too old. But her artwork is just shining. And she is 72 years old. And her art has just come out so, so beautiful. And now she's not afraid anymore. I had to teach her how to do a few things, but she said I touched her life. And then this other gal, she said, you showed me something that practically saved my life. And, art is an amazing thing. And she too is also an artist.
Mhm.
And then I have another female friend that she is in the health industry. And she said, you taught me how to stand up for myself and not be afraid.
Mhm.
Here's somebody telling me something valuable.
Mhm.
So we all require that validation sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
And sometimes we don't even think, like, when somebody says thank you, those are words of gratitude.
Mhm.
And when somebody says thank you, like I'm going to say, Dave, thank you so much for having me on your show today, because I'm able to express myself and share my words and my message in an effort to hopefully help others.
Mhm.
And you're going to say, Dinky, you're welcome. Not a problem. But see, we forget that inside of our hearts is that gentle touch that we
Mhm.
all require. And it's just emotional validation.
Yeah.
And it is possible for everybody on this planet to be able to say thank you and you're welcome.
Absolutely. And I firmly believe that if we can all tap into our shared humanity, we're capable of compassion, we're capable of understanding.
Right.
But we have to be able to see that within ourselves so we have that capability. And it just takes one or two voices to carry that trickle down effect
Right.
and where that can happen. And I believe there's pockets of that where that's happening now. But I think eventually the kindness movement and the heart-centered movement hopefully will be something that will become the rule rather than just the exception. And is a
Right.
way that society is governed. So um I see in the background, for those of you who are on YouTube, you're going to see Diana's desk, but right behind her, there's a red and blue eye. But I know you have a brand called My Talking Eye. So tell us about how you came up with the name, what resources you offer through that, and also what new projects that you may have occurring under that brand.
Okay. Well, that's called My Talking Eye. And the blue in the image itself is actually the color of my daughter Lily's eyes. And the lips represent the words she could not say. So now I try to share for her and other kids that have gone through the same thing. Any person that's lost anybody is your eyes often say words that you don't know how to express.
Mhm.
And that's where my talking eye comes in at. And it's helped my granddaughter a bit. And she believes that her mom is in a better place. And that's one of those things that people say. But we can only assume that the people we love are in a better place,
Mhm.
in a different place, in a different
Mhm.
realm.
Mhm.
I I came up with that concept and I wanted to build something. And before my talking eye even came around, I I had a hard time telling the story of how my daughter died because it was very tragic. It was on my birthday. 3 years ago, my birthday fell on Mother's Day. And it's like I was at the cemetery with my granddaughter And she sat there for 2 hours just talking to her mom because she was 12 when her mom died. And I wanted her to be able to have the 12 years later, have that experience to get to talk to her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And because I could not tell the story of how my daughter died, the tragedy in it, because every time I tried to write it down, I just felt so broken. And, not broken. I don't like that word anymore. Out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
When I was out of alignment, I I was just, unable to think clearly. And in trying to write, it like set me back 2, 3 days. And I just continued my grieving even harder. So then I thought, boom, you know what? I'm going to write a story about somebody else, but I'm going to be in the book in my own way. And the story starts out with a man that loses his family in a fire, and he becomes the bad guy. But he was a good guy before. So that's similar to like what happened to me. I had a good life, and then I went through my gray period of time where I was, transitioning from the before to the after. And that's what my main character in this book started out with. Then it shifts to 400 years later, where this guy he's now a spirit, but a new generation of, trying to keep this guy trapped in his cave.
Mm-hmm.
They had their explorations in self-discovery, in understanding their world, their challenges, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And we have all kinds of adventures in the book. And it's a marvelous story. But that's going to be a series. And then I also am building a course, well, a couple of courses and other mental health books to help out people in different ways. But I also found a new topic that is really funny. It's called Tools and Rules for Fool. And, and the reason for that is because we all do goofy things and we never want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like the guy that he's going to jump over the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is he always going to make it every time? So I'm taking slogans from, very popular, ones that we've heard over the decades. And that one is called Just Do It. Because there's personal pride that gets knocked down over time. And I want people to be able to have a good laugh. And that's what this book is about. But it's a little fun, a little funny. And in this book, I'm sure that there will be something that we can all relate to really get a good chuckle out of it.
That sounds interesting. And I think creativity, fantasy, adventure, I think those are ways that we can work through grief. And there's a lot of creative individuals out there who tap into that more so after challenge. Now, the name of your book series tell our audience what the name of that book series is.
It's called Veridien.
Okay.
It's Veridien. And that's the name of the community that gets blown up when the bad guy does his stuff.
Hmm.
The book covers a wide variety of things: injustice, fear, doubt, hate, love, lust. So many stories are connected to what is happening in my book. Even rejection, when some official says you don't fit into here. I even had that happen to me. And that's why I put this in the book, because I was going to get some education. And this lady said to me, I told her I wanted to be a realtor. And she said, honey, realtors have a certain look and you just don't have it. that cut me so deep. And that was like not a scratch. That was like a wound. It was almost like a broken bone in a way, Dave,
Yep.
because you have dreams and sometimes they just get shattered, but sometimes you just need to hook up with the right person to help you. And that's where a mentor can come in.
Absolutely. And now, Veridien, has that been published yet, or you're close to publication with
I'm
that?
close to publication. I'm going in and doing not the line editing, but the punctuation, because I have weird words in there. And the Microsoft word editor is telling me, what is this word? What is that word? And it's like, what I made up to is to add it to the dictionary.
Yeah.
So, Dave, let me tell you, I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. I didn't know the first thing about publishing a book, formatting one. I didn't know that the F word was not so great in books. So, this is something that is gentle enough for young adults to read. And there's so many stories, put inside of it that it's just meant for anybody to learn more about emotion. And that's where we're all at. Because when you drive down the road and somebody cuts you off, you can just flip them off. Before, a long time ago, I used to say, you, blah, 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 and give them a hand motion. But now I do this. Have a good day. And, because the difference is how you feel inside is how you react. And there is so much beauty in this world. When we are hurting, we almost have an ugly heart. And there is a way to make that better and to not be as angry or devastated, to not be able to move through life. I mean, because when you're mad, you quit taking care of yourself, your house, and just kind of everything.
Yeah.
But life is too beautiful to throw it away, Dave. I talked so much during this interview.
Hey, I am the student, you're the teacher. So you can talk as much or as little as you need to. So, but I mean, you've left us with just so many good things. You've left us with your heart. You've left us with your stories. You've left us with Lily's stories and Dyra's story. But I'm going to ask you to do one more thing for me. I'm going to ask you if you could leave our audience with one thing that you want them to remember from today. What would that be?
I think kindness. It's such a fun word, but it often gets abused. And I think we need to be kind to ourselves. And when we can do that, there is fake kindness and there's true kindness. These fake people, it's like they're more dismissive than anything else. But true kindness comes in when you feel that beauty that's within, and then you start looking like you've got a rainbow coming out of you.
Yep.
And you feel it, and it's almost like you're floating. And sometimes it's just holding the door open for somebody else or doing that thank you thing. But we forget about the beauty in this world. And I think we just need to find it within each of us to be able to share it with others. Because, I truly believe you can only have so much beauty inside of you before it has to start spilling out somewhere. And you just have to share it.
Yeah, I mean, beauty that's kept within is always better shared outside of ourselves. So, and I think if we can all do that, we can build a lot of really impactful alliances in our lives. So, Diana, my last question for you. People want to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
I am available at dinkysmithauthor@gmail.com. And I'm having to transition from a thing that I started a little while back with an effort that did not progress well. So I had to put off on a shelf where it becomes no longer usable. And now I'm just focusing on my podcast and a new website that I'm working on. But just get hold of me on Facebook. You can look me up under Dinky Diana Smith. And I'm on Facebook and what's that other one? Instagram. But I've been holding back on doing all my social media selfishly, and I'll say it that way, because I've been working on my books. Since I was able to separate myself from the other project that I was working on, I've now been able to solely focus on Veridien. And I'm so excited because it is going to be hitting Amazon very soon.
Let me know, because if the book goes live before our podcast drops, I can include that contact information to purchase the book in the episode notes. And also the name of your podcast.
It is called My Talking Eye.
My Talking. Okay.
Plain and simple. Plain and simple.
Okay.
And when you're doing things backwards, it makes you feel a little goofy, but it's all about Lily. She is not all about her. It's about life.
Yeah.
She turned my purpose around in my life. Unfortunately, she's not here to share it, but I believe our Heavenly Father makes it possible for her to peek in on what's going on.
I believe that too. So My Talking Eye, I know that it's on Apple Podcasts. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure that link gets included as well. Diana, thank you so much for just a wonderful, very far-reaching conversation today. I truly enjoyed it. And maybe we could do it again in the future sometime.
I would love to do that, Dave. And thank you very much for having me on your show so I can share my stories, my thoughts, my visions, and hopefully impact a life or two.
That is my hope as well, too. So, and with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.